Welcome to the Accidental Experts podcast. I'm your host, Bryce Hamilton. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a child and family therapist. I have been in practice for over 15 years, and I'm also a mom of 4. So I know the challenges both professionally and personally. I'm so glad that you're here today to grow your parenting toolbox. Please come as you are and be ready to learn. My goal is to make you the accidental expert so that you can raise healthy humans. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm so glad you're with us today. I am excited for our next guest. Her name is Zina Ortiz, and she is an LPC, so a licensed practicing counselor. She also is an expert in attachment and somatic therapy and also EMDR. And she is based in Colorado at a practice called The Elephant in the Room, LLC. And she's going to be talking to us today about our attachment and our kids' attachment and why that matters. With that, let's get to Zina.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm delighted to meet with you today.
Yes. Okay. So we're going to be talking about attachment. This is such an important topic.
Oh, absolutely. It is. And it's something that a lot of people with trauma, they don't have the training for. I think it's so essential in everyday interactions because we're connected. We are creatures of connection. We're wired for connection, and everything in our daily life is about connection. Even if it is answering an email or a text, that's a connection.
Yeah, a bid for connection, right? Like sometimes we do different things to get people's connection because we want to know that we're valuable. So can you talk about, I know in attachment, there's styles or types of attachment and what they actually mean, right? Because I'm sure that all of us have seen on the internet that you can take an attachment quiz and find out what that is. But can you tell us more about what that is?
Yes. There are 4 attachment styles, and they're rooted really from childhood in the way that we were raised or nurtured in early childhood from 0 to 2. From 0 to 5 is most ideal if we are supported through and through until 5 years old, but 0 to 2 sometimes that is enough. And the first one I like to begin with is the secure attachment. That is where we get our needs met when we cry, when we're hungry, diaper needs to be changed, we need to be held. We're not sitting there crying for hours and hours on end. Our needs are being met. So the child learns then, and not in a conscious way, but more in a subconscious way, that it's okay to cry. My feelings are heard. I matter. And my mom is there to provide for me nurturance, food, cleaning, and love, most particularly, especially touch. And touch is so valuable for little babies. We look for touch. We grasp. We go. You've seen a baby just holding on or reaching out to their main caretaker. It doesn't have to be mom. Sometimes, most of the times, it is because it has been that way for millennia. The second one that I like to talk about is the anxious attachment style. So the anxious attachment style happens as a result of inconsistent parenting. The parent not really being there. Sometimes is there when it's there, is loving, gives some affection and love, but not consistently. It may very well be deemed to someone, a parent who has addiction or who has their own trauma or what is called complex trauma. And I'll go later on with this term, explaining what this term really means. And so the child learns that, my needs are not always met. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But I can't, my mom is there, I'm going to hang on to her. And in an anxious and scary way, because anytime and any point she may pull back or she may leave me. So that is the fear of abandonment. Creates a core wound of my needs don't matter enough to keep and maintain love. And that is so essential when later on in life, it shows up later on in life in our clients that come in to see us, where they feel that they can't keep relationships because they feel they're being too needy And so it's difficult to maintain relationships that way when they're constantly calling or testing for fear that they're going to lose somebody else's love.
Mm-hmm.
The third one that I like to talk about is this disorganized attachment, or the disorganized or the fearful avoidant attachment. So this one is a combination of the anxious and the avoidance style, which I will explain later down this line of attachment styles. Disorganized is parent is there, parent's not there, they're really, really loving, but they can't really be counted on. So it's similar to the anxious style, but it's even more pronounced with disorganized behaviors of, I really want to love you, and when you're close to me, I'm going to pull away. It's very confusing for the other person who's the recipient of this kind of love or ways of connecting. And for the person who's experiencing that, was even more confusing. And they live in a constant state of threat. And threat is, if you give me love, it's threatening. But if I don't receive your love, it's also threatening. Mm-hmm. So it's both. Now, neurology, and it's valuable to talk about neurology, because neurology is where we feel our emotions, right? Emotions are energy, emotion, they move through our neurology. And neurology, we'll go to that, which is familiar, even when it's crappy. Mm-hmm. And feeling something or wanting to consciously and thinking that if I go for something that's healthy, but I'm not familiar with it, body reacts as if this is not familiar, it's a threat. So we must shy away from it, pull away and hide, which is not a very healthy way of connecting with someone. The fourth one and the last one is, and it's the most common one, is the avoidance. And this is the one where the person feels and wants love, but they can't seem to accept it. And so they pull away, they retract, they hide. And most commonly, they feel so overwhelmed with emotions related to anxiety or depression or both. And that they often resort to things like overworking to soothe the discomfort, overworking, overeating, overdrinking, over substances, over anything that is excessive in order to feel okay, to feel like they matter. It's their way of compensating, if you will.
Yeah. So what does parenting look like around that avoidant person? Like, what would that look like in that 0 to 2?
Oh, that's a very great question. I can give you an idea of what that might be like. I am an example of I will say that I am more of a fearful avoidant, but I'm more avoidant. I have been in the past, and it takes many sessions of therapy, and I'm constantly doing my own work. When I was a little baby, and I'm not a victim, but a survivor of complex trauma. And my mother was a young mom. She really didn't have a lot of experience with babies. And so as soon as she gave birth to me and brought me home, and I had my father, but my father was an alcoholic, couldn't really be present either. So she would go to work and leave me in my crib and come back for lunch and leave again. And so I was left there as a newborn crying for hours and hours on end for the first few years of my life. And so that what created is that even if the parent's there, it doesn't matter. The child learns that it doesn't matter. My feelings don't matter. My needs are not going to be met. And so it's not okay to show feelings because no one's there to hear them. Mm-hmm. So it's extreme neglect or some form of neglect.
Yeah. Now, so people can be there, but just not even emotionally involved, right?
Right. And there are many kinds of neglect. And the ones that I can think of at this moment is it's the physical neglect is one, which is obvious. The parent's not there because they have to work. The child needs to be taken to daycare. Now, emotional neglect is where the parent dismisses the child's feelings. For example, saying, "Oh, suck it up and stop crying," or "quit your sniveling," diminishing the child's emotional experience. Now, the other one, which is a combination of both physical and emotional, is where the parent is there, but they're not there. It could be a parent who's an addict. It could be a parent who's so dissociated they can't really be present for the child. And they're there like a piece of furniture, but there's no interaction, there's no connection, there's no bonding, which is basic to a healthy human being.
Yeah, we all need that, regardless of what age, but especially when we're in that 0 to 2 stage and learning about the world for the first time.
Correct. Yeah. It's where we learn. It is the foundation for one's being, emotional well-being, the values, and our self-worth and self-value. And you think about value for a baby, right? It's like no one ever thinks that a baby is valueless or that it's worthless. Absolutely no, we never think of that. But the baby knows its own value, and it's not shy when it asks for food. It says, "I'm hungry, feed me now," or "I'm dirty, change my diaper now. I want to be held." But the baby doesn't hold back because it knows, it expects that its needs will be met. Now, things happen along the way that chips away at this value that the baby has. And as an adult, later on in life, it may be the total opposite. It may be, I'm valueless, I'm not worthy. I have to work to earn my keep, to earn love. I have to justify my existence with work or with doing things. And so I have to be constantly doing things, which is one of the main values of an anxious attachment style human being.
Yeah. So it sounds like our attachment style is developed through our 0 to 2, and that's how we define it. Am I reading that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So then why does attachment matter, like in life? Like, and we're thinking about as parents, like, why does our kids' attachment matter? Like, how does this change their life or existence?
It's so valuable. As I shared with you earlier, Bryce, we are creatures of connection. We are wired for connection. And neurologically, a child's brain is like a sponge, and it's constantly in developing, and it's constantly it has what is called a neuroplasticity. And when a child receives love and affection and is held, neural connections begin to form. And when a neural connection forms is when a child is learning about love, connection, safety, and relationship. The relationships are safe. I can meet my own needs, and I can let somebody else meet my needs. It's building trust. Everything that is a human being. And these things manifest later in life, whether needs were met or not. All of this function or functions manifest later in life with broken relationships, divorces, maladjusted behavior at work or at school or both. And it leaves the person isolated. And it's, depression is one disorder that is so prevalent in our culture. And very few people ask, well, why is this happening to me? They go and look for something to soothe. They like medication, which is the fastest way to address it, but it doesn't really address it. It's just band-aid it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I hear what you're saying of like, if there's a trauma core, like if there's something that has happened to us and we're using something else instead of solving that problem, we're not actually solving the problem.
Right. Well, and then you talk about trauma. Well, neglect is not trauma. and two things happen. Trauma is a series of events or one event that happened in a child's life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but neglect is not trauma. It's actually the absence of love, of connection, of interaction with a child that creates core wounds. Now, it does not necessarily mean that if it happens one time that it creates core wounds. Absolutely not. I'm talking about repeated events that happen over time. Being consistently inconsistent.
Yeah. So is that considered complex trauma, or the lack of that is not trauma? So you said core wounds. Is that the same as complex trauma?
Yes, it is. I suppose that one can have core wounds that were created as a result of complex trauma. Yes, the repeated series of events that created the core wounds.
Yeah. So when we're thinking about this, I know you said earlier that the most common type of attachment is avoidant. Did I hear that correct?
Yes.
That's so interesting. I don't know that I realized that. So I'm sorry, you were going to say something about that being the most common.
Yes. And it's because, American culture, or most Western cultures, we value individualism, and we value independence.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of parents want to raise a child who's independent. Well, of course, we want to raise children who are self-sufficient, functional, healthy, independent. But it goes overboard to the point where if a child is isolated and doing things on his own, that's success right there. And we don't see that, wait a minute, it could actually be the root of something else, or the result of something that is far more profound than just independence.
Mm-hmm. But it's okay for our kids to be independent, right?
Oh, absolutely. And at the same time, it's very okay that the child reaches out for help, mm-hmm. for support, for soothing. Mm-hmm. And it's quite typical, and I will say healthy, for a child to reach out to his mom or dad when he has a scraped knee. Well, of course, a 5-year-old is not sufficient. It's not able to address that on its own. Mm-hmm. And so when we're born, we're so vulnerable. I mean, so vulnerable. We have so many needs, and we need a lot of hand holding for almost a decade before we can say, oh, we got this. Mm-hmm. It takes many years of repetition of the same thing: love, consistency, affection, boundaries, some kind of discipline. And the consistency is what creates the feeling of safety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I was thinking, I know that as a parent, something that is hard for me is when my kids, like, I think I have a 2-year-old, and sometimes he'll wake up in the middle of the night and it's like, I'm tired. He's obviously tired. It's time that we're supposed to be asleep. And that can be so hard. But I think to myself, and I don't remember how I picked this up, but I was like, even with my other children, like, they picked me, like they called for me. Right. And so that helps my ability to connect in that moment, because like the other part of me is like, go to sleep, close your eyes, right? Like, you can do this, just go to sleep. And I know that doesn't work. And I wouldn't like that either. Like if I woke up and I had a bad dream, or I just woke up, right? Like I just woke up from sleep. I think, I would want some soothing too, right? And often as parents, we reach for our phones in those moments, right? But our kids don't mm-hmm. have phones. And I try not to do that. But I just like think about what skills, and like, there have been times where I've had a bad dream and I have been like wrestling around, and my husband will be like, are you okay? I'm like, actually, let me tell you about this dream I just had. and so I think we are all trying to connect, but I think that's something that's really helped me in those moments where it's like, they're crying and they're calling for me. Right. That's and they picked beautiful. Me. And so that helps my, like, compassion to turn on, my like sense of support and love, right? Versus being annoyed, because I think as parents, we can be annoyed because sometimes we
Oh,
have
yeah.
endless amounts of things to do. And
Yes.
this is taking away from something else that we need to do. But I think this attachment is so important for us to be conscious of.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is that being a parent is the most challenging job in the world. There's no vacation, there's no benefits of any kind other than receiving a hug back
Mm-hmm.
occasionally and a kiss and then I love you, mom. And but it is very challenging, and sometimes it takes us to waking up in the middle of the night to soothe a child who just had a nightmare. Now, little children, they don't have the cognition to identify, gee, what is it that I need right now?
Mm-hmm.
And so the first instinct is to call out, mom,
Yeah.
mom, I need love, I need nurturing. And
Mm-hmm.
that's their way of finding soothing for themselves. Whereas we look for our phones or we look for something to occupy ourselves, where children's like, give me love, just give me love, give me some kind of soothing that I can feel okay with.
Yeah. Which maybe is what we should be doing as adults too, right? That part of like, we should be bidding for connection in those moments of distress instead of separating. Cause I think a lot of times technology supports that separation from other people. So can our kids develop a different attachment style than we developed?
Oh, absolutely. And just because I have described attachment styles doesn't mean that we are fixed into that attachment style only. With working, we can create healing experiences that can heal these wounds and create something different, a life that is different for ourselves. Now, for little children, absolutely. Even if, let's say, we did list an ideal parenting earlier in their lives, we can certainly heal those little baby wounds for our children. And that is continuous connection and consistency and love and affection to shift, to create shifts and changes
Mm-hmm.
in a child.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes.
Well,
Because we have that neuroplasticity too,
yes,
where
I was
we're
just going
able
to
to
mention
learn.
that. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So with neuroplasticity, we can even, we found that you have neuroplasticity until you die, that we
Yes.
literally can change our brain so that saying old dogs can't learn new tricks, a lie. It's totally a lie. And that's good though, because that means that we can heal. And I love this idea that parents can help to heal their children. And honestly, that might be the most powerful type of healing for the person who maybe came to the table with a set of skills that were maybe not sufficient at that time. And then
Yeah,
they're able to learn and grow and change and show their kids something different actually might be the most powerful kind of healing.
precisely. You said it right. Absolutely. That the thing that we look to heal coming from a parent who created those wounds, well, what a beautiful experience. What a great opportunity to mend and to fix and shift those wounds, of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That is the most powerful experience that can ever happen to a child.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think as parents, I mean, a lot of people showed up just exactly the way that they were. They didn't go to therapy in order to become a parent, right? Like sometimes we're not aware of what work we need to do on ourselves until we kind of have a mirror back at us, right? Like our kids are definitely a mirror where like there are times where my kids have said something and I'm like, ooh, I said that. Like I was playing Skippo with
Mm.
one of my daughters and in Skippo, you like turn over a pile and you don't know what's in it. And I had said maybe a couple of times, like, of course, because it was like, I put down a 4 and then another 4 was there. And I was like, oh, of course. Right. And then I started hearing her say that. And I was
Ah.
like, oh, I don't want to say, that didn't sound the way I wanted it to. So sometimes our kids give us that reflection to be aware of our words and our actions, which is actually beautiful. And so we don't have to come to this job, I would say, as a parent, Perfect. Because the likelihood of that is not likely. We're all just doing the best we can. But I think those reflection moments when you hear your kids say something that you don't like maybe they're rough to their siblings and maybe you reflect that like maybe you're rough, like maybe your startup is kind of that way of like seeing that part about yourself. But I love this idea that we can heal ourselves. And that's also an important part. So both being able to heal the things that maybe we didn't do so well earlier in our kids' lives, or if we're starting our parent journey, being able to do that. So what can parents do to heal themselves?
That's a great question, Bryce. And you mentioned a great example. You identify something that you have been doing that you're not very proud of. Or was it expecting something negative to happen and it did happen for you when playing the skip-up? Yeah.
Yeah.
What a valuable experience that is for looking within. Everything in our neurology stores every experience that we have experienced. And neurology recalls the moment of birth, maybe even before then. Not that we remember it consciously, but you see these experiences get stored via emotion. And memory and emotion, that's what creates this loop of feelings and things moving inside of us when we're triggered or not, or when we encounter a behavior or an action to do. And then there's, oh, yeah, I got to do it. Everything that we do is geared by emotions. It's the fuel that jets us forward towards movement and creation and behavior. Now, looking within is a way to find and discover, well, where does that come from? Where did I learn that? And feeling the sensation. Now, I understand that this is not a pleasant experience, mind you. It's not something that we all run to and say, oh, yeah, I got to sit with the experience, with the emotion and sensation. But it's so valuable and rich because looking within from where the thing comes from, wherever that thing is located, we can find something really rich that hasn't been looked at. Now, it's even more valuable, if possible, to do it in connection with another human being. As I share with you, these core wounds are created in this connection. And therapy is a reparative emotional experience. Now, what a great way to heal a wound in a connection with another human being, in connection with a healthy human being, which is in therapy, or with a good friend, right, that can give us feedback about what we're saying. Ask questions. What's there? What's going on? Does it have qualities? Is it moving? Is it heavy? Is it hard? Is it hot? And finding out what is its story. Sometimes this emotional experience or these discomforts, they carry with them a memory that we can see. Sometimes, not always, depending of when this belief or emotion was stored. And it dissolves. Nothing really stays. We're in a constant state of change, and so our emotions and these things to shift because all they want is attention, just like little children.
Yeah. So what ways do you find that? So like, let's say as a parent, you're like, okay, I have these things. I'm not proud of how I'm responding to this, or I've recognized that maybe my attachment isn't in a healthy place, or I don't like how I'm doing this. What types of therapy do you find are best for that type of work?
Great question. So that for us in here at my clinic at Elephant in the Room LLC, I teach my clinicians, I train them, and I found that the best method to address these core wounds or even any emotional discomfort is somatic practices. Now, somatic thinks of the body, because as I shared with you earlier, the body is the vessel for emotions, and it stores every memory that we have lived in one's life. Somatic practices are by far the most rich of all the trainings that I've had. And trust me, I've had them all because I have been searching for something that works. And I find that I go back to somatic practices as the most effective method for addressing core wounds.
Love it. So is EMDR something that you would consider somatic because it is releasing body things, or is it just somatic practice?
Well, an EMDR works best for a memory that can be visually, that can be seen. Mm-hmm. Sometimes there is discomfort that has no memories. As I shared with you earlier, we can go into an emotion or sensation in the body and sit with it. It doesn't necessarily have a memory that we can visualize. Maybe an object or a symbol or a color, but that's it. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have the richness that an EMDR memory will resolve. Yeah. Now, the somatic practices go far deeper into unconscious. And unconscious is going deep into those things that are below the level of consciousness. Now, awareness and consciousness is just the tip of the iceberg. What's mm-hmm. rich is what's really being held in the body.
Yeah.
What's unconscious.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much that we don't know about ourselves sometimes that we're not aware of, that are not in our working access. I love this idea that we can do that work. So how do we raise secure kids, right? So secure attachment is, I would say, the ideal attachment, right? Where we're both able to connect with people and disconnect with people. We're able to find self-love and also love others. So how do we raise kids that are secure?
Great question. Well, as I share with you, being a parent is a challenging job, and we need to be on, like sitting with the kids, playing Legos. Let's go to the park. Let's make ice cream. Let's make sandwiches. I love you so much. It's just on. It can be exhausting job. Now, I don't mean to say that we have to do that all the time. It gets exhausting. We also need time for ourselves to recuperate, to build our energy battery. But, however, what's valuable for a child is to be acknowledged, to be validated, to identify needs and meet those needs. And that's very basic. It's meeting the needs of the child in the moment. If a child is crying, well, not necessarily soothing it works, but also teaching the kid according to age. Of course, we don't teach babies how to soothe because they don't have the cognition to self-soothe.
Yes.
But with little kids, what do you need right now? What can I do? Mm-hmm. And that helps the child really see it and express the need. I need a hug. Mm-hmm. So expressing a need is hugely valuable, where the child is validated in a moment and heard. And being heard, just that alone, it's such a rich experience that creates healthy human beings in the future.
Yeah. And even being able to have kids that can express their emotions, right? So a need is great. And I think a leveling up from that is also an emotion. Sometimes my 2-year-old will be like, you make me so mad, because I've said like no more ice cream or something like that, right? Like it's part of that. And I'm like, yeah, that makes you mad, right? Like I don't have to agree with it, but I can agree with the feeling that he is experiencing in that moment and validate. Like it is hard to not have 2 ice creams, right? I agree.
Of course. Yes.
Yeah. So some of that is just being present and acknowledging, like you said. So acknowledging what their need is, right? And sometimes it's hard to do that in the moment, but thinking about like what helps me is thinking about like what I would like in those moments, right? Like when it's like I'm upset, like I know that, if I'm upset, and for my husband, often I'll be like, I just need you to hug me and tell me it's going to be okay, or we're going to figure this out. And that, even though we don't have a plan, whatever it is, it doesn't matter, right? Like, it's like, we haven't figured it out yet, but just knowing that somebody's in it with me is so helpful. So I think, knowing that I need that, then I'm like, of course my kids need that too. And so thinking about what we need in a healthy way, right? Like how we'd like to be comforted, right? Even if we're not able to accept it yet, like what we would ideally like to happen. right?
Yeah.
And then being able to give that to our kids, I think also helps with a secure attachment.
Absolutely. And connection with that other.
Yeah.
Right. Where I don't have the ice cream, but I have mom. I have mom with me, and we can bear through this little crisis of not having the ice cream.
Yes, together. We can do this together. So what do you want parents to take away from this conversation? We've had such a good conversation about attachment and how it works. What do you want parents to remember?
If I can give a piece of advice to parents in knowing what I do know now about attachment, about building healthy human beings, the most valuable thing that one can have or one can offer to a child is love. And that I think that is the most valuable need to be met for a child, because think about all the basic needs for a child, right? They need a roof over their head, they need clothing, they need food, education. I think that number one will be love. Love, everything that encompasses love, right? Like connection, affection, soothing, hugging, and then the rest can find its way in. But without love, that's where issues are built. That's where issues begin to arise for a child. Because think of it this way. Let's say you have a child who has all their needs met, but parents are never there. Like, it has all the toys, all the video games, all the food and education. But if it's in connection with a human being, you bet that kid's going to have issues when they're teenagers, when they're adolescents. That's when issues begin to arise. And if you meet a child who unfortunately lives on the streets with its mother, but mom is on. She's connected to her child and building positive experiences of love and connection. And we can do this together. And that child's going to do okay. Yeah, he's going to have challenges. He or she's going to have challenges. But I will say that they're better off than the kid who has everything. If I was to compare them both. Yeah.
I appreciate that. I think we're doing the best we can. And I think, sometimes we forget as parents, like, us showing up is enough, right? Like, us just being present with our kids and loving our kids. And that's actually more valuable than all the things.
Yes, absolutely. We're creatures of connection. We're not pieces of furniture that are just sitting there. If one can offer connection to a child, asking questions, being curious, being connective, sitting on the floor, playing dolls, blocks, Legos, whatever, that is the most ideal. And I'm not saying just do it every day, but consistently enough so the child has a feeling of safe and connection with another human being.
Yeah. Yeah, I love this. Thank you so much for your time today. This has been such a lovely conversation.
Thank you, Bryce, for the invitation.
Thanks again, Zina. That was such a great conversation. I don't know about you, but I took away a lot of things from this conversation. I love this idea that if we haven't been showing up in our most ideal parenting moments, that we can make a change, and that can greatly impact our kids and our connection to them. And I think that for me, I'm going to continue to just think about how in those moments of my kids calling for me, that they're asking for me. And I hope that you'll take away some really important things from this conversation as well. I would love for you to follow us on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and TikTok, and also rate and subscribe to our show. And keep the emails coming with topic suggests to accidentalexperts@gmail.com. With that, I'll say have a fantastic day. Some words from our legal team.
The information presented in this podcast is not intended or implied to be a substitute for appropriate professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. All content, including text, graphics, images, and information contained on or available through this podcast, is for general information purposes only. This podcast makes no representations and assumes no responsibility for the accuracy or information on or available through this podcast, and such information is subject to change without notice. You are encouraged to confirm any information obtained through this program with other sources and review all information regarding any condition or treatment with the appropriate professionals.
What we're saying is, Yes, I am a real therapist, but I'm not your therapist.